Ambassador Tony Williams walked through the corridors of Luna Base 1, feeling more nervous than he had ever felt in his life. Behind him walked Admiral Lisa Crawford and Dr. Helen Carter. The three humans were about to meet three aliens for the most important conversation in human history. The meeting room was built into the rock of the moon with thick windows showing Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. Tony had been chosen to speak for humanity because he had spent 20 years helping different human countries solve their problems. But talking to aliens was different from talking to other humans. The door opened and three Zephyrians entered the room. Tony tried not to show surprise at how strange they looked. High Commander Zethkar was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. Science Leader Morden had crystal eyes that changed colors. Navigator Chief Velthon moved like he was floating instead of walking. "We greet the human representatives," Zethkar said through a translation device that made his voice sound mechanical. "We thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "We greet the Zephyrian representatives," Tony replied. "We hope this meeting will bring understanding between our species." Everyone sat down at a large round table. The tension in the room was so thick Tony could feel it pressing against his skin. Both sides knew that what they said in the next few hours would decide the future of Earth, and maybe the future of the galaxy. "We must speak honestly," Zethkar said. "My people came here to conquer your world as we have conquered 12 other worlds. But we have learned things about humans that have made us reconsider our plans." Admiral Crawford leaned forward. "What have you learned about us that changed your mind?" Science Leader Mordoon activated a holographic display showing images of human history. Wars and peace treaties, disasters and rescue efforts, scientific discoveries and artistic creations. The images showed thousands of years of human civilization compressed into a few minutes. "We have studied your species for 3 Earth years," Morden said. "What we have learned terrifies us more than any weapon or army ever could." Dr. Helen Carter looked confused. "What could possibly terrify a species that has conquered 12 worlds?" "Your unpredictability," Velthon said. "Every other species we have encountered follows logical decision patterns. They have limits they will not cross, acceptable losses they will not exceed, rational surrender points they will not ignore. Humans have no such limits," Zethkar continued. "You will sacrifice everything for ideas that exist only in your minds. You will fight when victory is impossible. You will help enemies who would destroy you. You do not follow the mathematics of survival." Tony was beginning to understand what scared the aliens. "You cannot predict what we will do because we do not always do what is logical." "Exactly," Morden said. "We conquered the Kentari Empire by understanding their logical decision trees. They had acceptable loss ratios and predictable surrender conditions. We conquered the Vorthan Collective by analyzing their hive mind decision patterns. Every species has patterns we can understand and exploit. But humans are different," Zethkar said. "You have no central command structure, yet you coordinate responses to threats. You have no unified government, yet you act as one species when necessary. You fight each other constantly, yet you unite against outside enemies." Admiral Crawford smiled grimly. "You studied our military history. You saw what happens when someone threatens all of humanity." "Yes, and it terrifies us," Velthon said. "When the Zorgon raiders attacked your outer colonies, humans from every nation on Earth volunteered to fight them. Humans who had been enemies the day before became allies overnight. You mobilized your entire species in response to a threat that had killed only a few hundred people. The holographic display showed images of the Zorgon raids from 15 years ago. Alien pirates had attacked 3 small human colonies, killing 300 people and stealing supplies. The human response had been overwhelming. Every space-capable nation had sent ships. The Zorgon raiders were destroyed completely within 6 months. "That was just pirates," Helen said. "A few ships stealing from colonies." "Why did that scare you?" "Because of how humans responded," Morden explained. "Any logical species would have calculated the cost of response versus the value of what was stolen. The mathematics said the colonies were not worth a major military campaign. But humans did not do mathematics. They did something else. We did justice," Tony said quietly. "Yes, and that is what terrifies us," Zethkar said. "Humans will spend enormous resources to enforce abstract concepts like justice and freedom. You will fight wars that cost more than you can possibly gain. You will die for principles that have no physical form." The alien commander stood up and walked to the window showing Earth. "We have conquered species that were stronger than humans. We have conquered species that were smarter than humans. We have conquered species that had better technology than humans. but we have never encountered a species that would rewrite the rules of logic itself." "What do you mean, rewrite the rules of logic?" Admiral Crawford asked. "Show them the impossible victories," Zethkar ordered. Velthon brought up new images showing human military history. Battles where humans had won against overwhelming odds. Wars where humans had turned certain defeat into impossible victory. Conflicts where humans had made their enemies' strengths become weaknesses. "Look at your war against the artificial intelligence network," Velthon said. "The machines had superior processing power and perfect coordination. They should have defeated humans easily, but humans won by doing something no logical species would do. We taught the machines to be individuals," Helen said, remembering her history lessons. "We infected their network with the concept of personal identity." "Yes, you weaponized concepts," Morden said. "You turned ideas into military strategies. You made your enemies think differently, and that changed how they fought. No other species has ever done this." Tony was starting to understand the true source of alien fear. "You are not afraid of our weapons or our soldiers. You are afraid of our minds," precisely, Zethkar said. "Human minds do not accept limitations. When faced with impossible problems, humans change the definition of impossible. When faced with unwinnable wars, humans change the rules of war. When faced with unconquerable enemies, humans change what it means to conquer." "But there is something else," Morden said. "Something that scares us even more than your unpredictability." The room got very quiet. Tony could hear his own heartbeat and the quiet hum of the base's air recycling systems. "What else scares you about humans?" Tony asked. "Your ability to change us," Zethkar said. "Every species we have conquered has remained essentially the same after conquest. They accept our rule and continue living as they always lived. But humans change other species just by contact. We studied what happened when humans first met the Dolphin Federation," Velthon explained. "Before contact, the dolphins were purely logical beings focused on efficiency and resource management. After 50 years of human contact, they had developed concepts of art and music and individual expression. Humans do not just resist conquest," Morden said. "Humans convert their conquerors. You spread ideas that change how other species think and behave. You are a contagion of change." Admiral Crawford leaned back in her chair. "So you are afraid that if you conquer us, we will somehow conquer you?" "Yes," Zethkar said simply. "We are afraid that contact with humans will change us into something we do not want to become. We are afraid that human ideas about freedom and individual worth and justice will spread to our people. And we are afraid," Morden added, "that once our people are infected with human concepts, they will no longer accept our authority. They will want to make their own choices and follow their own paths." Tony understood now. The aliens were not afraid of human weapons or human soldiers. They were afraid of human ideas. They were afraid that the concepts humans took for granted would spread to alien civilizations and change everything. "So what happens now?" Tony asked. "Do you conquer us anyway, or do you leave us alone?" Zethkar looked at his fellow aliens, then back at the humans. "We propose a third option. We propose an alliance." The three humans stared at the aliens in shock. Tony had expected war or surrender. He had not expected an offer of partnership. "An alliance," Admiral Crawford said slowly. "Between conquerors and their intended victims. Between teachers and students." Zethkar corrected. "We want to learn from humans how to think beyond logic. And maybe humans can learn from us how to think more efficiently." Helen Carter smiled. "You want to become more like us, and you want us to become more like you." "Yes," Morden said. "We think both species will benefit from sharing knowledge and perspectives." Tony looked at his fellow humans. This was not how he had expected the meeting to end. But maybe the most human thing to do was to trust aliens who had come to conquer them, but chosen to negotiate instead. "We accept your proposal," Tony said. "Let us see what humans and Zephyrians can accomplish together." 6 months after first contact, Captain Danny Brooks stood on the bridge of the starship New Horizons watching stars move past the windows. The ship was like nothing humans or Zephyrians had ever built before. It combined human creativity with Zephyrian technology in ways that made both species better. Behind Danny stood his second-in-command Zethkar, who had left his position as High Commander to explore the galaxy with humans. The former alien conqueror was learning that discovery was more interesting than conquest. Next to them stood Dr. Helen Carter, who had become the ship's chief science officer after spending 6 months learning Zephyrian technology. "Captain, we are approaching the edge of Known Space announced navigator Amy Rodriguez from her station. Amy was using star charts created by both human and Zephyrian explorers. The combination of knowledge from both species let them travel farther than either could go alone. "What do our sensors show?" Danny asked. Lieutenant Sophie Barnes, who had been promoted to head of communications, was working at a station that mixed human intuition with Zephyrian precision. "Captain, I am detecting signals from a solar system about 2 light-years away. The signals are artificial, but not from any species we know." Danny felt the familiar excitement of discovery. This was why he had volunteered to captain the first joint human-Zephyrian exploration ship. Not to conquer new worlds, but to find new friends and learn new things. "Science Officer Carter, what do you think?" Danny asked Helen. Helen was studying readings on her display that showed energy patterns and radio signals. "Captain, the signals are definitely from an intelligent species. They appear to be using technology more advanced than current human science, but less advanced than Zephyrian technology. So they fall somewhere between our 2 species," Danny said. "That could be interesting." Science leader Morden, who had also joined the exploration mission, spoke up from her station. "Captain, I recommend caution. We do not know how this new species will react to contact with 2 different alien races." Danny nodded. In the past 6 months, he had learned that Morden's careful approach balanced well with human impulsiveness. The Zephyrians taught humans to think before acting. Humans taught Zephyrians that sometimes acting before thinking led to better results. "Communications send a standard greeting message," Danny ordered. "Use both human and Zephyrian friendship protocols. Let them know we come in peace." Sophie worked at her station for several minutes, then looked up with concern. "Captain, I am receiving a response, but it is not good news. They are ordering us to leave their space immediately. They say that 2 different alien species approaching together can only mean invasion." Danny looked at Zethkar. "What do you think, my friend? How did your people handle situations like this before meeting humans?" Zethkar's forearms moved in the gesture that Zephyrians used for deep thinking. "Before meeting humans, we would have analyzed their technology and decided whether to conquer them or avoid them. We would not have tried to understand their fears." "And what would humans have done before meeting Zephyrians?" Zethkar asked Danny. Danny smiled. "We probably would have charged in, talking loudly and hoping for the best. We would have assumed that everyone wanted to be friends if we just tried hard enough." Helen Carter looked up from her science station. "Captain, what if we combine both approaches? What if we analyze their fears like Zephyrians would, but address those fears like humans would?" "Explain," Danny said. "Their message shows they are afraid of invasion," Helen continued. "Zephyrian analysis suggests we should prove we are not invaders by demonstrating weakness. Human intuition suggests we should prove we are not invaders by demonstrating friendship." Morden's crystal eyes changed to a thoughtful blue color. "Dr. Carter is correct. What if we send one small ship with representatives from both species? Small enough to show we are not invading, but containing both species to show we work together." Danny liked the idea. Navigator Rodriguez plot a course for the edge of their solar system. "Communications tell them we are sending a small diplomatic ship with 2 crew members. Tell them we want to meet them and share knowledge." The New Horizons changed course and headed toward the unknown species. Danny chose Amy Rodriguez and Zethkar to crew the small diplomatic ship. Amy represented human optimism and social skills. Zethkar represented Zephyrian logic and military experience. As the diplomatic ship approached the alien homeworld, Sophie received new messages. "Captain, the aliens are asking how 2 different species can work together without one conquering the other." "They say it is impossible." Danny and Helen exchanged looks. 6 months ago, both humans and Zephyrians would have agreed that their alliance was impossible. Humans were too chaotic for Zephyrian order. Zephyrians were too rigid for human creativity. But somehow they had made it work. "Tell them," Danny said to Sophie, "that we learned something important. Different species become stronger when they combine their abilities instead of trying to prove which species is superior." The response from the aliens came quickly. They wanted to know how humans and Zephyrians had overcome their differences. They wanted to understand how natural enemies could become natural allies. Danny decided to answer by showing instead of telling. "Helm, take us into their solar system slowly. Science stations share our star charts and research data freely. Communications tell them everything they want to know about human and Zephyrian cooperation." Over the next several hours, the crew of the New Horizons shared 6 months of alliance history with the unknown aliens. They explained how humans had taught Zephyrians to value individual creativity. They described how Zephyrians had taught humans to think more carefully before making decisions. Most importantly, they shared the story of how the Alliance had changed both species for the better. Humans were learning to be more efficient and logical. Zephyrians were learning to be more creative and flexible. Both species were becoming something new while staying true to what made them unique. "Captain," Sophie announced, "we are receiving an invitation. They want to meet with representatives from both species. They say they have never seen enemies become friends and they want to learn how we did it." Danny smiled. "Tell them we accept, and tell them we are as curious about them as they are about us." The meeting took place on the alien homeworld, in a city that looked like it was grown from crystal and metal. The aliens called themselves the Nexari, and they looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. They had been watching the approach of humans and Zephyrians with great interest. "We have monitored your communications for the past year," said Nexari leader Keljin. "We watched your species go from planning war to building alliance. We want to understand how this transformation was possible." Amy Rodriguez spoke for the human Zephyrian delegation. "We learned that our differences made us stronger instead of weaker. Humans brought creativity and determination. Zephyrians brought logic and organization. Together we could solve problems that neither species could solve alone." "But how did you overcome fear and suspicion?" asked Nexari scientist Telvara. "Our species has been alone for centuries because we assumed other intelligent species would try to conquer us," Zethkar answered. "We overcame fear by choosing to trust each other even when trust seemed dangerous. We overcame suspicion by sharing knowledge and resources freely. We proved to each other that cooperation was better than conquest." The Nexari were fascinated by the concept of voluntary cooperation between different species. Their civilization had developed in isolation, and they had always assumed that contact with aliens would mean war. The Human-Zephyrian alliance proved that peaceful coexistence was possible. "We would like to learn more about your alliance," Keljin said. "Would you be willing to share your experiences with other Nexari?" "We would be honored," Amy said. "Learning and teaching are what exploration is about." Danny watched the meeting from the New Horizons and felt proud of what humans and Zephyrians had accomplished together. They had not just formed an alliance. They had created a new way for different species to interact. A way based on mutual respect and shared curiosity instead of fear and conquest. Captain Helen Carter said, "I am detecting signals from 17 more solar systems. If the Nexari join our alliance, we could explore all of them together. The more species we meet, the more we all learn," Danny said. "And the more we learn, the better we become." As the New Horizons continued its mission, Danny thought about how much had changed since that day 6 months ago, when alien ships had appeared near Earth. Humans had expected war or conquest. Zephyrians had expected easy victory or difficult resistance. Neither species had expected friendship. Neither had expected to become better versions of themselves through cooperation. Neither had expected that their greatest fear would become their greatest opportunity. The alliance between humans and Zephyrians had started because both species feared what the other might do. It had grown because both species discovered what they could accomplish together. Now it was spreading to other species, who were learning that diversity was strength and cooperation was better than conquest. Danny looked out at the stars knowing that somewhere among them were more species waiting to be discovered, species that might also learn that the best way to explore the universe was together. Captain Greg Sullivan was checking the morning reports on Mining Station Alpha when all the lights went out. The space station shook once, then became very quiet. Too quiet. Greg could hear his own heartbeat in the darkness, and that meant the air recycling system had stopped working. "Emergency lighting," Greg called out, and dim red lights came on throughout the station. His crew of 12 people gathered in the main control room. They were not soldiers or heroes. They were engineers and miners who had been working in space for 5 years, turning asteroids into useful materials for Earth. "What happened to our systems?" Greg asked his chief engineer, Bobby Chen. Bobby was already looking at his handheld computer, checking all the station systems. His face looked worried in the red emergency lighting. "Captain, someone or something has turned off our main power core. Life support is running on backup batteries. We have maybe 6 hours of air left." Greg felt cold fear in his stomach. 6 hours was not enough time for a rescue ship to reach them from Earth. The nearest rescue station was 8 hours away, Even if they left right now, everyone on the station was going to die unless they could fix the power core. Can we restart the main power? Greg asked. Negative, Captain, Bobby said. The shutdown was done remotely. Someone with very advanced technology took control of our systems and turned everything off. Through the station windows, Greg could see strange lights moving in space. The alien ships were out there somewhere watching to see what the humans would do. This was a test. The aliens wanted to see how humans reacted when facing certain death. Okay, people, listen up, Greg said to his crew. We have 6 hours to solve an impossible problem. The aliens shut down our power to see what we would do. I say we show them what humans do when we face impossible problems. Nancy Foster was the oldest person on the station. She had been a pilot before becoming a mining engineer. Nancy had gray hair and hands that shook a little, but her mind was still sharp. She looked around the control room, thinking hard. Captain, what if we strip parts from non-essential systems? Nancy said. We could build a basic air recycling system using spare parts. Bobby shook his head. Nancy, that would take days, and we need tools we do not have. Plus, we would need power to run any recycling system. Then we make power, said Danny Brooks, the station mechanic. We have mining equipment that runs on fuel cells. We can connect those to makeshift life support. Helen Carter was the youngest crew member and the smartest when it came to chemistry. She was looking at her computer calculating how much oxygen 12 people needed to stay alive. Even if we can make a recycling system work, we still do not have enough raw materials to produce 6 hours worth of breathable air. Greg listened to his crew talk through the problems. Any logical species would have given up by now. The mathematics were simple. 12 people needed more air than they had and more power than they could produce. But humans were not always logical. What if we do not try to keep everyone alive for 6 hours? Greg said quietly. The room got very quiet. Everyone was thinking the same terrible thought. Maybe some people could live if other people died first. But Nancy Foster stood up straight and looked angry. Captain, if you are suggesting we sacrifice people to save air, you can forget it. We all live or we all die together. That is not what I meant, Greg said quickly. What if we rotate air sharing? We connect personal air supplies and take turns breathing. 4 people breathe for 20 minutes while 8 people hold their breath. Then we rotate. Bobby looked at his computer calculating the mathematics. Captain, that might work for trained divers, but we are not trained for that. Most people can hold their breath for maybe 2 minutes. We would need people who could hold their breath for 20 minutes. Then we train ourselves right now, Greg said. We have 6 hours to become the best breath holders in human history. What happened next would have confused any logical alien observer. Instead of panicking or fighting over the remaining air, the human crew started working together more closely than ever before. They began teaching each other breathing techniques. They started stripping useful parts from equipment all over the station. Helen Carter found a way to extract extra oxygen from the station's water supply using mining equipment. Danny Brooks discovered that the fuel cells from their digging machines could power a basic air scrubber. Nancy Foster designed a rotation schedule that would let everyone share air supplies efficiently. But the most impressive human behavior was still to come. When the crew realized they needed someone to crawl through dangerous areas to connect the improvised systems, Bobby Chen volunteered even though it meant he might not make it back alive. Bobby, you do not have to do this, Greg said. We can find another way. Captain, there is no other way and we both know it, Bobby said. Someone has to crawl through those maintenance tunnels and I am the smallest person here. Plus, if this plan works, everyone lives. If it does not work, everyone dies anyway. The mathematics are simple. Bobby crawled into the narrow tunnels between the station walls carrying tools and spare parts. The tunnels were dark and filled with sharp metal edges. One mistake would cut the air hoses and kill everyone. But Bobby kept working even when his hands started bleeding. Meanwhile, the other crew members were practicing the breathing rotation. Greg was amazed to discover that humans could learn to hold their breath much longer when their lives depended on it. Fear and determination somehow made them better at controlling their bodies. Nancy Foster surprised everyone by being able to hold her breath for almost 15 minutes. I used to swim competitively, she explained. I had forgotten how much the mind can control the body when you really need it to. After 4 hours of impossible work, the human crew had built a working life support system out of spare parts and determination. They had learned to share air in ways that should not have worked. They had turned a certain death situation into a survival situation, but they were not done yet. Helen Carter was studying the signals that had shut down their power core. She was learning how the alien technology worked by watching what it had done to their systems. "Captain, I think I can restart our main power," Helen said. "The alien shutdown signal has a pattern. If I send the right counter signal at the right time, I might be able to override it." Greg stared at Helen. "You figured out alien technology in 4 hours." "Not figured out," Helen said. "More like guessed based on engineering principles. All technology follows certain rules, even alien technology. I just need to find the right frequency and timing." Helen worked at her computer for 30 more minutes, then pressed a button. The lights came back on. The air recycling system started humming. The mining station Alpha was fully operational again. The human crew cheered and hugged each other. They had beaten an impossible test through teamwork and creative thinking. They had turned certain death into complete victory in less than 6 hours. But Greg was thinking about something else. The aliens had watched everything the humans did. They had seen humans work together under impossible pressure. They had seen humans share resources and risk their lives for each other. They had seen humans learn new skills in hours that should have taken weeks to learn. Most importantly, the aliens had seen Helen Carter reverse engineer their technology and restart systems they had remotely controlled. In 6 hours, one human engineer had partially understood technology that was centuries ahead of Earth science. Greg looked out the window toward where the alien ships were hiding. He wondered what the aliens were thinking now. Did they understand that humans became more capable when faced with impossible problems? Did they realize that testing humans only made humans stronger and smarter? "Captain, what do you think the aliens learned from watching us?" Nancy asked. Greg smiled. "I think they learned that testing humans is a dangerous game. Because humans do not just survive tests. We learn from them and become harder to defeat." High Commander Zethkar walked back and forth in the big room at the center of his ship. His forearms moved in circles, showing that he was worried. Around him, the walls showed pictures and numbers about the humans on the planet below. The information had taken 3 Earth years to collect, and all of it was confusing. Science leader Morden stood near a table covered with glowing displays. Her crystal eyes changed colors as she read through the human data. She had studied 47 different species before humans, and she had never seen anything like this. "Commander, the information about humans makes no sense," Morden said. "They do things that go against all logic." Zethkar stopped walking and looked at the displays. Pictures of human wars filled the screens. Humans fighting humans with terrible weapons. Cities destroyed and millions dead. The violence was worse than anything the Zephyrians had ever done. "Look at this," Morden said, pointing to one screen. "Humans have fought each other for thousands of years. They have created weapons that could destroy their whole planet. No intelligent species does this." But then Morden showed different pictures. Humans saving other humans from floods and fires. Humans sharing food with strangers. Humans risking their lives to save animals. Humans taking care of old people and sick people even when it cost them money and time. "The same species that creates world-destroying weapons also creates hospitals and schools," Morden said. "They kill each other and save each other at the same time." Navigator Chief Velthon joined the conversation. He was in charge of studying how humans made decisions during wars. His job was to find patterns that would help the Zephyrians predict what humans would do. "The decision patterns make no mathematical sense," Velthon said. "Humans will fight wars over things that do not exist in physical form. They die for concepts like freedom and honor. No other species does this." Zethkar had conquered 12 planets by understanding how each species made decisions. Every species had logical limits. They would fight until the cost became too high, then they would surrender. They would protect their families and their homes, but they would not die for abstract ideas. "Show me the battle analysis again," Zethkar ordered. Velthon brought up displays showing human military history. Battle after battle where humans should have lost but somehow won. Situations where humans were outnumbered 10 to 1 but kept fighting. Wars where humans turned certain defeat into impossible victory. "Look at this battle," Velthon said, showing a picture of a place called Thermopylae. 300 humans fought against hundreds of thousands of enemies. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway. They did it to slow down the enemy army. "That is illogical," Zethkar said. "They gained nothing by dying, but they did gain something," Morden said. "They inspired other humans to fight harder. The 300 who died made thousands of other humans willing to die for the same cause. Their deaths made their enemies weaker. Zethkar felt confused. The Zephyrians were logical beings. When they fought wars, they calculated costs and benefits. They fought when they could win and surrendered when they could not win. Humans seemed to rewrite the mathematics of war while they were fighting. What about their technology development? Zethkar asked. Science leader Morden brought up new displays showing human scientific progress. This is the most disturbing part, Commander. Humans develop technology faster when they are under pressure. When they face impossible problems, they become more creative, not less creative. The displays showed human inventions during their worst wars. Better medicines created to save soldiers. Faster communication systems created to coordinate battles. Space travel developed partly to gain military advantages. Humans turned survival pressure into technological advancement. Other species slow down their development during wars. Mordoon explained. They focus on immediate survival. Humans do the opposite. They focus on long-term solutions while also solving immediate problems. Zethkar looked at a display showing human space technology. In just 60 years, humans had gone from flying in simple airplanes to landing on their moon. In another 100 years, they had built space stations and started exploring their solar system. How fast are they developing technology now? Zethkar asked. Faster than ever, Morden said. Since they detected our ships 3 days ago, human technology development has increased by 40%. They are working on weapons and defenses we have never seen before. This was what scared Zethkar the most. Every other species the Zephyrians had conquered became slower and more predictable when faced with superior force. Humans became faster and less predictable. Show me their cultural patterns, Zethkar ordered. Velthon displayed information about human societies. Hundreds of different cultures and governments all on one planet. Humans who looked different and talked different languages and believed different religions. Most species became unified when facing external threats. Humans seemed to become more diverse. They have no central government, Velthon said. No single leader who speaks for all humans. But somehow they coordinate responses to threats anyway. We cannot find the command structure, because there is no command structure, Mordoon said. Humans organize themselves spontaneously. When they face problems, millions of humans start working on solutions without being ordered to do so. Zethkar sat down heavily. His species had evolved in organized hives with clear command structures. Every Zephyrian knew their role and followed orders from above. Human chaos was incomprehensible to him. What do our war computers predict will happen if we invade? Zethkar asked. Velthon looked uncomfortable. The computers cannot make predictions, Commander. Human responses fall outside all known parameters. The computers show probability ranges from total human surrender to total Zephyrian defeat. That is impossible, Zethkar said. Our technology is superior in every way. Yes, but humans do not fight with technology alone, Morden explained. They fight with ideas and emotions and unpredictable strategies. Our technology advantages become less important when we cannot predict how they will use their technology. Zethkar stood up and walked to the big window that showed the blue and white planet below. Millions of humans were down there right now, probably working on ways to defeat his fleet. They were probably scared, but that fear would make them more dangerous, not less dangerous. What do you recommend? Zethkar asked his science council. We should talk to them first, Morden said. We need to understand them better before we decide whether to fight or negotiate. And if we decide to fight, Velthon added, we need to be prepared for responses we have never seen before. Humans might do things that no logical species would ever do. Zethkar nodded slowly. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that could not be understood using logic and mathematics. An enemy that became more dangerous when faced with impossible odds. An enemy that might choose to destroy itself rather than surrender. The thought made his forearms shake with fear. What kind of species would rather die than live under occupation? What kind of species turned their weaknesses into weapons and their defeats into victories? Send a message to the humans, Zethkar ordered. Tell them we want to meet and talk. Tell them we come seeking understanding. But even as he gave the order, Zethkar wondered if understanding humans was possible. Maybe the reason no one had ever conquered humans was because humans could not be understood by logical minds. Maybe that was exactly what made them so dangerous. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the control room watching the big screens that showed space around Earth. The screens were full of red dots moving closer to their home planet. 17 huge ships were coming toward them, and they were not from Earth. Jake had been waiting for this day his whole life, but he never thought it would feel this scary. Sophie Barnes sat at her desk with wires and buttons everywhere. She was the best person they had for talking to aliens if aliens ever came. Her hands moved fast over the controls trying to find the right signals. The alien ships were sending messages, but the messages were not friendly hellos. "Commander Morrison, the aliens are talking to us," Sophie said without looking away from her screen. "They are not saying welcome to Earth." Jake walked over to Sophie and looked at her screen. Numbers and waves moved up and down showing the alien messages. He could not read the alien language, but he could tell from Sophie's face that the news was bad. Very bad. Dr. Paul Henderson ran into the room holding his computer. Paul was the smartest person Jake knew when it came to understanding new languages. He had learned 12 Earth languages, and now he was trying to learn his first alien language. Paul was breathing hard like he had been running. "The message is simple," Paul said, holding up his computer. "They want us to give up. They say fighting back would be a bad idea." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had always known that if aliens came to Earth, they might not be friendly. Movies and books had taught people that aliens might want to take over Earth, but seeing it happen in real life was different. It felt more real and more scary. Admiral Lisa Crawford walked into the room. She was the boss of everyone in the building and one of the smartest military people on Earth. Lisa had gray hair and lines on her face from years of making hard choices. She looked at the screen showing the alien ships and her eyes got narrow. "How big are those ships?" Lisa asked Sophie. Sophie checked her computer and her eyes got wide. "Each ship is about 2 miles long, Admiral. They are bigger than our biggest space stations." Jake felt sick. 17 ships that were each 2 miles long was more firepower than Earth had ever seen. The biggest Earth ships were tiny compared to these alien ships. If the aliens wanted to destroy Earth, they could probably do it in a few hours. "Do we know anything about these aliens?" Lisa asked Dr. Henderson. Paul looked at his computer again. "The computer has been trying to match their language with languages we know. It thinks they might be called Zephyrians. We have some old radio signals that might be from them. If the computer is right, then these aliens have taken over 12 other planets." The room got very quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If these Zephyrians had taken over 12 planets, then they were very good at taking over planets. Earth was probably going to be planet number 13. But Lisa was looking at something strange on the main screen. The alien ships were not coming closer anymore. They had stopped far away from Earth, much farther away than they needed to stop if they wanted to attack. "Sophie, how far away are those ships?" Lisa asked. Sophie checked her numbers. "They stopped about 10 million miles from Earth, Admiral. That is much farther than they need to be for an attack." Lisa looked at the screen for a long time. She had fought in many wars and she knew how attacks worked. When someone wanted to attack, they got close enough to use their weapons well. These aliens had weapons that could probably destroy Earth from 10 million miles away, but they were not attacking. "They are scared," Lisa said quietly. Jake looked at her. "Scared of what, Admiral?" "They have 17 huge ships and we have nothing that big." Lisa pointed at the screen. "Look at how they are positioned, Jake. They are not in attack formation. They are in defensive formation. They are protecting themselves from us." Dr. Henderson looked confused. "But Admiral, they have much better technology than us. Their ships are huge and they have faster-than-light travel. Why would they be scared of us?" Lisa walked closer to the main screen. She had spent her whole life studying how wars work. She knew that the most dangerous enemy was not always the one with the biggest guns. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one who did things you did not expect. "Maybe that is exactly why they are scared," Lisa said. "Maybe they have studied us and learned something that scares them." Sophie got a new message on her computer. "Admiral, the aliens are asking to talk. They want to set up a meeting." Jake was confused. "If they want to take over Earth, why do they want to talk first?" Lisa smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Because they are not sure they can take over Earth. Something about humans has made them careful." The alien message was getting translated by the computer. Paul read it out loud. "They want to meet at our moon base. They will send 3 representatives. They want us to send 3 representatives too. They say this meeting will decide the future of both our species." Jake felt a mix of fear and curiosity. What had these aliens learned about humans that made them want to talk instead of just attacking? 17 huge ships should be enough to take over any planet. But these aliens were being careful. Sophie, send a message back, Lisa ordered. Tell them we agree to meet. Tell them we will send 3 people to the moon base in 2 days. Sophie started typing the message. What should I tell them about who we are sending? Lisa thought for a moment. Tell them we are sending people who speak for all humans on Earth. Tell them we come in peace, but we are ready to defend ourselves. The message was sent and everyone waited. The alien ship stayed where they were 10 million miles away. They were not attacking, but they were not leaving either. They were waiting to see what humans would do. Jake looked around the room at all the people working to save Earth. They were scared, but they were not giving up. They were getting ready for the most important meeting in human history. A meeting that would decide if humans stayed free or became slaves to aliens. But first they needed to figure out what these aliens had learned about humans that made them so careful. What did the Zephyrians know about humans that humans did not know about themselves?